Chapter 3 Pain Stretches the Soul, 2004. As I sat and pondered about my spiritual journey, I always want to reflect on how to be a better person. When dark days come, I am always mindful that God did not make 2 days the same. I can testify about that now as I reflect back over my life. Today, I may be feeling sad, moody, and lonely, and if it's really painful, then I know I have to pull myself up by engaging in positive things. It always seems to get me through these times. The things that inspire me are taking walks outdoors. A lake or park view is the best. I enjoy nature because it allows me to block out the confusion that's on my mind. I can listen to the birds chirp while they sing their praise. I feel as if I need to reconnect to God when I am in that place in the midst of nature. On the days when the weather is not conducive for my walks, I arrange things in my bedroom to create a peaceful atmosphere. I light my aromatherapy candles and listen to various kinds of lounge, soul, jazz, and praise music, preferably nothing with words, then curl up and read something stimulating, inspirational, or just write more inspirations. This has been the best method to discovering my healing. I take the necessary steps to become quiet and take charge of my time as I listen to my spirit because my heart and emotions are not always in sync with what's really going on with me. Many times we search for friends or company to help us get through the hard days that we face. I realized from my past that my peers did not understand me. I had to be honest with myself and ask, do I truly know what's going on within me? On occasions, I would speak aloud an affirmation that my life was going to change for the better one day. Through the visions, I could not see the steps that I needed to take to get to the outcome of what God was showing to me. I feel that God is preparing and isolating me for His plan. While I grow to understand that I must walk alone, I run to Jesus because I have nobody in this world who understands me. People who I thought were cool to hang out with started to change, or should I say that I had changed. As I was forced to let go and follow my destiny, I dreaded not having any friends left standing. I accepted knowing that time had put distance between my relatives that live out of state. At times I struggled with surrendering everything to listen to the inner voice. It was a daily process to learn how to be in tune with myself. As I spend time alone, I'm gaining the strength and assurance that there is a greater purpose in self-discovery. My being, development, thoughts, and prayers depended on God daily. I became an introvert because I spent a lot of time alone. I went through seasons of feeling filled with joy to crying rivers of tears. I did not trust anyone. I imagined that whatever I was feeling within had to reflect on the outside. However, I felt that no one could rescue me because this was a part of the process. The experience has been like no other experience I have had. I can only attribute it to God allowing a positive energy to flow into my life. It changed my perspective as I learned to surrender and follow with faith the dreams and vision to fulfilling my destiny. As time went on, new people would show up and exhibit an interest, or out of curiosity, they wanted to know things about my life and my writings, but I knew that I had to be conscientious of whom I allowed to get close. Things were happening supernaturally as I continued to dream about my future. I would journal the visions and dreams. I felt amazed and honored knowing that God was sharing His secrets with me. I wanted to surrender fully, but I also struggled in the flesh daily for companionship. I missed going to certain places that I knew I had to refrain from, that is, nightclubs and places that opened doors that I needed to stay away from. I was the type of person that had charisma and was invited to come along on outings and doing things with other people along with their families. There must have been something special about me that people liked, but on the other hand, I could never seem to hold on to a lasting friendship. Oftentimes, I felt that I was being set apart. It primarily started with writing Rhythm of Rage, and then the inspirations followed. I had a dream of seeing myself sitting among people alongside others and signing or selling my inspirations that gave me chills. I was amazed and had great anticipation about how my future was going to look. I surfed the internet to find stories of other people who I could relate to, but there were no stories quite like mine. I did find strength and encouragement on how God had moved in their lives. People were being blessed based on their faith and obedience and listening to the inner voice. Breakthroughs were being manifest out of horrifying situations, businesses, overnight millionaires, finding true love, etc. I began to cry often because I could see some pieces of my life being transformed as well. The more revelation I got, I started putting together all the information that I had been journaling and taking into account the prophecies that were spoken over my life. I realized that everything I'm going through is leading me down a path to my destiny. I became aware and mindful to embrace the people that were coming into my life to assist me in some capacity in a spiritual, physical, mental, or emotional way. I wish the lessons and experiences were much easier. When I encounter pain or my comfort zone is being invaded, I pray. I have to keep an open mind that it must be something that God is teaching, shaping, or testing me to allow it. When the test seems long, I cry and ask God, what is it that He wants me to learn? I believe that it was time to start the editing process of the book. My heart is closely knitted within Rhythm of Rage. During the times, God brought back memories that I wished had never happened, and for years it lay dormant within me. But His new mercies helped me to have the courage to face it. As the seasons changed, I felt an urgency to send some of my inspirations out during the Thanksgiving holiday. I had hoped to find someone that would take interest in hearing my story and hoped that it would lead me to finding an editor. I had learned that the church was becoming involved with selling books as well as publishing Christian books. I was uncertain if I should start there, but I gave it a chance. In retrospect, I knew that by sowing a seed, God would eventually bless it in due season. I had chosen 25 churches to send a greeting card, a letter, 2 picture frames, and a short bio as a gift for the holiday. Before I sent any of the packages out, I prayed, and the Lord spoke to my spirit. The voice was quiet and calm. I heard that they were going to reject me. I still knew that I had to do this because it was pressing on my heart to share the gift that God gave to me. After I sent the packages, I patiently waited for a response. I would say around a week later, I received several return packages, open and unopened. I received a card, a short letter with words of encouragement, and note cards with sarcastic comments. The process went on for approximately 3 weeks. I had never felt so much hurt and rejection to that degree. It felt like a bee sting each time the postman left a slip in my mailbox. It must have been spiritual because I dreaded driving to the post office to pick up the unwanted packages. As I expressed what my heart felt through the rejection I received from the church, it was very easy to accept the discouragement. It can influence a person to look at Christianity and religion in a negative way, especially when you are trying to use your talents and gifts to uplift others in a positive way. I couldn't help but read over and over again the words that I received. They were uplifting and positive. At times, I would break down and cry because there were only a few churches that seemed to care enough to send back some encouragement. As a servant, I am aware that there will be times of opposition and adversity, and with each act of faith, it's possible that an obstacle will surface. Once I got quiet to reminisce why the plan didn't work out, I cannot say that God didn't forewarn me, but I insisted on moving forward with the concept. I would not let that deter me from the promise. Through my unshakable faith, I have faced many doors that were slammed in my face, but in retrospect, it was all worth it. As I expound on the letters that I received from the churches, I felt the encouragement to keep going and to not give up. Then, on the other hand, I felt the cold rejection and resentment that came from the other churches that sent back the package. I've experienced persecution and rejection on every side as a servant. I have learned to pick up my cross and share the good news wherever I go. Today, I can look back and smile because I made it through. As I persevere, I can only surrender and run to the arms of Jesus when the world closes in on me. Since knowing that God put a new song in my heart, no man can stop the inevitable that is destined for my life. No matter how many doors close in my face, I will not stop believing and praying. Therefore, I'm not allowed much time to wallow in self-pity. As I regained the momentum to press on, the weather was turning to a bitter cold as the nights grew long and dark. Christmas bells and carols were being sung everywhere. I pressed to get quiet as I fervently prayed to God to guide my heart. I came to the conclusion that it wasn't time to release my manuscript for editing. I felt in my spirit that the Lord wanted me to open the book again. I picked up Rhythm of Rage and began for the 5th time to read and rewrite about the journey. There were times when I questioned the Lord, and then I felt incompetent about my writing skills. I never applied myself in English during school. I wasn't an academically inclined person, but I loved being creative and athletic. But somehow I made it through school. While reflecting, it must have been God's grace. When it snowed, I became even sadder because I wasn't in the mood to buy gifts or make plans for the holidays. I fell into a crying spell, and all I did was cry, 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 day in and day out. I finally asked the Lord if He was purging me. As I walked back through my life for the 5th time, that intensified the purging. The Lord wanted me to make sure that I tell the world that Jonathan, my father, did ask for forgiveness many years ago. He came to me with sincerity, acknowledging his wrong. I began to share my feelings with a few close people who were supportive during my spiritual transitioning. I remember having several intimate conversations about why was God putting Jonathan on my heart. I often thought about when was the last time we saw each other. It was during the time his father passed away in January 2002. We had the burial at the family plot in Selma, Alabama, where Jonathan lived. I did not recall anything out of order when I greeted Jonathan or when I departed. The repast was held at Wakefield Hill. As soon as I got out of the car, there Jonathan was, leaning on a rod. That was his favorite thing to have while resting when he got tired from walking through the woods. I politely gave him a hug and embraced him after we spoke. We talked briefly about my kids and how I was doing. Then I gave him my new address and phone numbers to reach me. Amazingly, 2 years later, during the time when I asked God whether He was purging me, I just couldn't shake the feeling of thinking about Jonathan. I started having thoughts about what is he going to think when he reads the book, and then I often thought about the people who have died that are mentioned in the book. I very seldom wondered whether he was my biological father, only because my mother was promiscuous, and the fact was that she gave Rocky, Lionel, and me different last names at birth. But the birth certificate said that Jonathan was my father. However, I felt confused and had learned to not trust him because I judged him by the way he treated me during the years he tried to molest me. The mental games and the emotional and physical abuse that he caused me, but at times I did grow weary about it. A dear friend of mine at the time suggested that I could ask God if Jonathan was my biological father. He believed that God would tell me if it was true, aside from having a paternity test. I felt completely at ease to ask God. I prayed and petitioned to the Lord, how come Jonathan never acknowledged or reached out to me over my adult years? I thought that he should have been proud of me for how my life was turning out. Unfortunately, Rocky and Lionel's lives were affected badly. They have suffered tremendously throughout their adult life from our childhood trauma. I felt that I was treated like the prodigal child after I had left home 22 years ago. I couldn't make any sense or reasoning as to why he did not make any contact with me because I forgave him. I tried having an open mind that maybe one day he might call, send a card or letter. I never received that one phone call or any correspondence in the mail. I did not stop having respect or showing my kindness toward Jonathan. During the last week of the year, I had a nightmare. I dreamt that my son Jacob had died. I was sitting at a funeral wearing black, sitting next to a friend who was deceased. The last time I dreamt of being at a funeral wearing all black was weeks before my mother passed away, but I knew of her terminal illness. I woke in a panic and realized that it was the holiday break. Jacob was away visiting Saul, and I tried calling, but I got no answer for 3 days. I prayed and put the rest into God's hands by telling the Lord, my kids are His first before they are mine. The next day, on New Year's Eve, I remember having a small discussion with a coworker about the plant on my desk. It was my grandfather's plant that the company had bought me when he passed away. That morning, I received a call around 10 in the morning at work. While the phone rang several times, I gazed at the console, and suddenly an eerie feeling came over me. I did not answer the phone because my mind was on finishing the month-end report for the calendar year. I was hoping to receive an announcement that I could leave early as well. Once the phone stopped ringing, I assumed that it went into voicemail mode. Shortly after, my coworker called me into his office to listen to the voicemail. He urged me to give my cousin Nella a call. Because he knew by the message and the tone that it was urgent, I caught the butterflies as my stomach twisted into tiny knots. Before making the call, I contacted a friend that I had recently had the conversation with regarding whether or not Jonathan was my biological father. The Lord knew that I needed someone to be strong for me. I went into a conference room to make the call. The news was that Jonathan passed away that morning from a heart attack. I was not in severe shock. While listening to what happened, my voice started to crack as I ended the call. My eyes were filled with tears as I walked back to my desk. As soon as I finished the report, I left work. I broke down in my car because I was hurt from not having his love, a father's love. I was so emotional about it to the point I asked God, why did He give me the type of parents I had been given? As I pondered behind the steering wheel, I felt a calm whisper as these words entered my mind. Remember weeks ago. He answered my question one evening while I was leaving work. I looked up to the moon and said, Lord, it's just me and you against the world. My emotions started running wild with thoughts about not having anyone in my life that ever genuinely loved me. There was no one consistent in my life to give me the support that I needed when I did achieve victories or to encourage me to do better when I failed. The Lord deposited these words into my spirit that I was sent to the world to be rejected so that I could do His will. Once I came to the realization that by not being accepted or ever feeling loved, it would propel me to search for God until I find Him. As I pondered about my life and how good God was, I just wanted to give Him more and more. The more that I yielded to thinking about Him sporadically throughout the day, the less my fears became. I can see why God says in His Word Keep your mind stayed on me, and I will keep you in perfect peace. I never truly used my mind and heart to concentrate on how much God loved me during my life, such as a time as this. Another year was embarking upon my journey. I was unable to share how God was pouring this gift to write out of me with my Father. I never felt compelled to tell him about the news. I did not know how he would perceive it, and during the time I was wrapped inside the love that God was pouring into my heart through the inspirations. As a tribute to my father's passing, I wrote an inspiration for his obituary. I envisioned him and myself walking down streets of mansions. I also wrote him another inspiration and placed it inside his pants pocket. I titled it, I Pray. I was expressing that I pray his soul rest in peace and accepting that we are born blind into this world until we choose Christ. I was placed into his life to be that flower that he never dreamed of. He did not live to see my purpose flourish, but I know in the spirit, if he can see mine, all is forgiven. As I make each step back to my Creator, I pray for that kind of grace. That chapter of my life was officially closed and put to rest. As I pressed to embrace a new year, the tears never seemed to stop falling. My eyes became open to see the power of God in all things. Through all of the pain and pressing, I drew closer to hearing from God. I experienced some bad days as the road got bumpy. I counted on one hand the few people that were around me at the time. It was evident that people were being removed one by one. It was painfully hard to press forward, knowing that the faces in the stands would not be familiar to me. Sometimes I felt that God was using these experiences to test my reactions and to propel me to write more inspirations about these matters, and most importantly, to remain focused on the vision He placed inside my heart. Shelley was someone that I had known since grammar school when I lived in Michigan. When I finished high school in Alabama, I relocated to Michigan. We reconnected at my first job, which was at a bacon factory as an assembly line packer. When I relocated to Illinois, we still managed to stay in touch. I was in her wedding one summer. She knew my family that lives there and would see them often. Through the years, we visited each other, and our friendship grew, and we became close friends. She called me one day while I was at work. During our conversation, I detected no gentleness in her voice. She was stern and to the point. She asked me if it was true. I replied, "What is true?" She said that a friend of hers told her that she saw me leaving out of my aunt's boyfriend's house. I responded, "No, that isn't true," and I started asking her questions about it and how my name became involved in the rumor. She was not able to answer my questions and replied that she was going to get back to me after she spoke to her friend. The way she projected her feelings of anger on me caused me to become offensive. I felt hurt and surprised by it. I was not guilty and had no other reason to dwell on the matter, but by her response, she wasn't finished with it. I wasn't guilty of doing anything that she was trying to find out about my character. I didn't know how I became a part of a bad rumor like that one. Then I felt how long had she been thinking I would step as low to mess around with someone else's man. Then I wondered, how could I have been mistaken for someone else? In retrospect, there was an issue between two of my aunts concerning John Doe. He was the father of two of my cousins, and my aunt was still in love with him. Well, one of her sisters was being accused of having something going on with him behind my aunt's back. I don't know how true it was, but that was the rumor going around in my family. How I became a part of the rumor, I have no idea. I live in another state, and during the time, I had drama in my own life with my husband at the time. My standards and morals were decent, and that's how I've always tried to carry myself. When I thought more about it, I realized that my friend owed me some money, and I wondered, did this have anything to do with it? I could not see the reasoning for how she addressed me the way that she did, because it created a distance between us. I prayed to God to fix it and to help me to let go of the hurt. Honestly, it hurts to be accused, especially by someone that you value in your life. I admired Shelley and wanted our friendship to continue, but because I was stubborn and hurt, I didn't try fighting for it. My integrity and behavior will always speak for itself. At least, that's what I believe.